Ethan had never thought of himself as a hero. In fact, he had always been more of a loner, someone who liked his quiet life on the colony, working as a mechanic, fixing broken engines and machines. But everything changed the day he found her. It was a day like any other. The sun set over the dusty horizon of the colony, casting long shadows across the rocky landscape. The settlement, a small cluster of buildings, lay quietly nestled in a valley, far away from the bustling centers of human civilization. Ethan was walking back from the workshop, tired after a long day of repairs, when something caught his eye. A flash of movement. It was brief, barely noticeable, but enough to make him pause. He squinted into the dimming light, his instincts kicking in. At first he thought it might be an animal, a local creature perhaps. But the closer he got, the more his heart began to race. There, lying motionless on the ground, was a girl. But she wasn't human. Her skin shimmered with a faint blue hue, not like any shade of human skin. Her long silver hair lay tangled in the dirt, and her delicate features looked almost otherworldly. She was unconscious, her breathing shallow, as if her very life was slipping away. Ethan knelt beside her, his heart pounding. He wasn't sure why, but he knew he couldn't leave her. "Hey, can you hear me?" he asked, gently shaking her shoulder. Her eyelids fluttered. Then, with a soft gasp, her eyes opened. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Ethan was struck by the intensity of her gaze. Her eyes were a vibrant shade of purple, a color he'd never seen before. They were full of pain, fear, and something else. Something ancient, as if she carried the weight of an entire world within her. The girl gasped again, her breath catching in her throat. Her voice, when it came, was weak and faint. "Please, help me," she whispered. Ethan didn't hesitate. He carefully lifted her into his arms, supporting her head as he rushed back toward the colony's medical facility. The weight of her was surprisingly light, but the urgency of the situation made his steps feel heavier with each passing second. Inside the medical facility, the colony's doctor, Dr. Kellen, took one look at the girl and raised an eyebrow. "Ethan, what is this?" he asked, his voice a mix of confusion and curiosity. "I don't know," Ethan admitted, his voice shaking. "I found her out there. She's not from around here. Her skin, it's like nothing I've ever seen." Dr. Kellen nodded and motioned for Ethan to lay the girl down on an examination table. The doctor immediately began scanning her with a series of diagnostic tools. Ethan stood by, watching anxiously. The girl was still unconscious, her breathing erratic, her pulse weak. "I've never seen anything like this," Dr. Kellen murmured, looking at the readings on his screen. "Her vitals are all over the place. She's not human, that's for sure, but she's alive, barely." Ethan felt a strange tug in his chest as he looked down at the girl. He couldn't explain it, but he felt connected to her, as if their fates were somehow intertwined. "Can you save her?" Ethan asked, his voice almost pleading. Dr. Kellen didn't answer immediately. He seemed lost in thought, analyzing the readings. Finally, he sighed. "We'll have to try, but I don't know if anything we have here will work. We don't even know what species she is." Ethan nodded, his eyes still fixed on the girl. "Just do whatever you can, please." As Dr. Kellen worked, Ethan kept watch over her, unwilling to leave her side. Hours passed, but the girl didn't wake up. Eventually, the doctor looked up, his face grim. "I don't know how much longer she can hold on like this," Dr. Kellen said. "Her body seems to be rejecting the treatment, whatever it is. Her species is completely different from ours." Ethan didn't know what to do. The panic in his chest grew stronger. He couldn't just let her die. Not after everything he'd already been through to get her here. But he was just a mechanic. What could he do against something as mysterious and powerful as this alien girl? And then something strange happened. As he sat beside her, staring at her fragile form, he felt a strange warmth on his palm. His hand, which had been resting on the edge of the table, suddenly felt connected to her. It was as if their very hearts were beating in sync. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The girl's eyes fluttered open again. This time they were more focused, more aware. She blinked up at him, her lips trembling. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan's heart raced. "I'm Ethan. I found you outside." "You were—" He stopped, unsure of what to say. "I couldn't just leave you out there." She seemed to study him for a moment, her eyes narrowing as if trying to make sense of who he was. Then her lips parted in a faint, pained smile. I'm Arya," she said softly. "I'm not from your world." "I don't belong here," Ethan was stunned. Where are you from? What happened to you? Arya closed her eyes as if the effort of speaking was too much. I was part of a mission. A diplomatic mission, but something went wrong. Our ship crashed. The others, they're gone. I'm the last one. Ethan's heart went out to her, alone. She was completely alone in this strange world. And yet there was something in her eyes that told him she wasn't just any lost traveler. She was something more. Something important. You're not alone, Ethan said, his voice gentle. I'll help you. I promise. Arya's eyes met his again, and for a brief moment she seemed to believe him. She nodded as if trusting him without question. And in that instant, Ethan knew that his life would never be the same. But he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than just a chance encounter. Something about her, about the way she had looked at him, made him feel as though their fates were already sealed. He didn't know it yet, but the journey he had just begun wasn't just about saving an alien girl. It was about saving more than just her life. It was about discovering the truth of who she really was, and why he was the one who had found her. The days that followed Arya's arrival were a blur for Ethan. He had never been particularly good with people, preferring the solitude of the workshop or the quiet of the colony's outskirts. But Arya wasn't just anyone. She was different, and in a strange way, so was he now. Every time he looked at her, it felt as though a thread was pulling them closer together, even though they didn't fully understand why. Arya was slowly recovering, but her condition was fragile, and there were moments when Ethan thought she might slip away again. Ethan spent every free moment by her side. He would sit with her in the small medical room talking about anything and everything. At first, Arya had trouble understanding the simple concepts of human life. Earth was so different from her home, and her species had a very different way of life. But slowly over time, they began to communicate better, exchanging small fragments of their cultures. She told him of her world, of the far-off stars where her people had lived in peace, until the war had torn everything apart. Despite all the strange things that Arya had told him, it wasn't the stories of intergalactic war or the advanced technology that fascinated Ethan. It was the way she looked at him, like she was seeing something inside him he didn't know was there. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of purple and orange, Arya sat up in her bed. Her movements were still slow and unsteady, but she was improving. She had insisted on trying to walk today, and although Ethan had offered to help her, she had refused. She was determined to stand on her own. I need to try, she said quietly, her voice steady but soft. Her lavender eyes were focused on the far side of the room, but there was an intensity to her gaze that Ethan couldn't ignore. Are you sure you're ready? Ethan asked, worry lining his voice. He had come to care for her in a way he hadn't expected. She had become a part of his life, and the idea of losing her terrified him. Arya nodded, taking a deep breath as she slowly swung her legs over the side of the bed. Her feet touched the cold floor, and she stood, shakily at first, but then more firmly. Ethan took a step toward her, but she raised her hand, signaling him to stop. I can do this, she said, her voice full of quiet determination. Ethan stood still, watching her as she took a careful step forward. Then another. She was walking. It wasn't graceful, but it was progress, and that was enough. A smile tugged at the corner of Ethan's lips. You're doing great, he said, his voice full of admiration. Arya's gaze flickered toward him, and for a brief moment she looked almost vulnerable. The connection between them was growing stronger every day, and it wasn't just because of her need for protection. There was something deeper, something unspoken. Ethan couldn't deny it. He felt it in every word, every glance. Suddenly Arya stopped, her hand pressed to her chest as if something was hurting. Her face twisted in discomfort, and for a second Ethan thought she might collapse. He rushed toward her, his heart in his throat. Arya! He said urgently, his hands reaching out to steady her. I'm okay, she whispered, her voice strained. Just give me a moment. Ethan watched as her breathing became more erratic. She staggered, trying to regain her balance, but she was too weak. She collapsed into his arms, and for a moment he thought she might pass out again. What's happening? What's wrong? Ethan asked, his voice shaking with fear. Arya's breathing was labored, but she tried to speak. I don't know. It's too much. The energy here, it's overwhelming. Ethan held her tighter, his heart racing. He didn't understand what she meant, but he knew that something was wrong. "We need to get you back to bed," he said quickly. Arya nodded weakly, her eyes closing. "I don't belong here, Ethan, not like this. My people. We are connected to the planets we come from. We feel the land, the people, the stars. But this place, this world is too different. It's draining me." Ethan frowned, confused. "What do you mean? You're telling me that Earth's energy is hurting you?" Arya nodded slightly, her forehead resting against his chest. "I'm not from this world. I need to go back. If I stay here too long, I will fade away." Ethan's mind raced. He didn't want to lose her. Not after everything they had been through. But he didn't know how to help her. The only thing he could think of was to keep her safe, to keep her alive. But it seemed that even that might not be enough. Suddenly, the door to the medical room opened, and Dr. Kellen entered. He had been monitoring Arya's condition, but it was clear that he hadn't expected things to take this turn. "What's going on?" the doctor asked, his face filled with concern as he saw Arya in Ethan's arms. "She's weak," Ethan said, his voice tight. "She's saying she's connected to her homeworld. That being here is hurting her." Dr. Kellen's expression hardened. "I had a feeling it might be something like this," he muttered. He moved closer, examining Arya. "This is beyond my expertise, but it sounds like she's experiencing a kind of psychic overload." Ethan blinked. "Psychic?" "Her species, if I'm correct, has a deep connection to their environment. They can feel the pulse of the land, the energy that flows through it. If they're separated from their homeworld for too long, they suffer physical and mental collapse," Dr. Kellen explained, his voice serious. "Is there anything we can do?" Ethan asked desperately. Dr. Kellen sighed. "The only way I can think of to help her is to stabilize her energy, but it's risky. I'll need to connect her to something that can provide her with a form of balance, but we don't have the technology for that here. And even if we did, there's no guarantee it will work." Ethan's mind raced. He didn't have much time. But then an idea struck him. He knew something that might help. He didn't know how, but he was willing to try anything to save her. "I'll do it," he said, his voice firm. Dr. Kellen looked at him, puzzled. "What do you mean you'll do it?" "I don't know how, but I'll find a way to help her. I won't let her die." The doctor studied Ethan's face for a long moment, then nodded. "It's your call. But you should know. Whatever you're planning, it could be dangerous. You're not just dealing with her life, Ethan. You're dealing with something far bigger than you can imagine." But Ethan didn't care. He couldn't lose Arya, not now. And if there was even the slightest chance that he could save her, he would take it. With renewed determination, he turned back to Arya, who was still resting in his arms, her breathing slowing. "We're going to get through this, I promise." Arya's eyes fluttered open. "I believe you," she whispered, her voice filled with trust. Ethan's heart swelled with something he couldn't name. But whatever it was, he knew one thing. He would fight for her, and whatever it took, he would save her. The days following Arya's collapse were filled with uncertainty. Ethan couldn't shake the memory of her fragile form in his arms, her life hanging by a thread. Dr. Kellen had promised to help as best as he could, but the doctor's words still echoed in Ethan's mind. "This is bigger than you can imagine." Ethan didn't understand exactly what Arya's connection to her homeworld meant, but he knew one thing. She wasn't just an alien. She was someone who had become important to him, someone whose life he would fight for. As Arya's condition slowly stabilized, Ethan focused on the task at hand, figuring out how to help her. He spent hours poring over books, medical files, and even ancient texts on intergalactic species. But every theory he came across seemed to fall short of offering any real solution. There was nothing he could find that could connect her back to her planet's energy. In the meantime, Arya grew stronger, but the tension between them was palpable. She had begun to see strange things in her dreams, visions of stars and distant planets. She would wake up drenched in sweat and look at Ethan with wide, confused eyes. She had mentioned feeling something calling to her, but the pull was faint. She felt as if she were slipping away from everything, and yet she was still here. One night, as Ethan sat by her side, she spoke. "I feel like I'm fading," Arya whispered, her voice quiet but full of emotion. She gazed at him, her lavender eyes filled with something Ethan couldn't quite understand. He had been expecting this. "You're not fading, Arya. You're just adjusting. You'll get through this, I know you will. But Arya shook her head slowly, her long silver hair falling across her face. No, Ethan, it's more than that. I feel the distance between me and my people. My connection to them. It's weakening. The longer I stay here, the more it pulls away. I can feel it. She paused, taking a slow breath. I need to go back. Ethan's heart sank at the words. But what about the danger? The people who tried to kill you? I can't let you go out there alone. I don't care if your people want you back. I'm not losing you. Arya met his eyes, her gaze soft yet distant. You don't understand, Ethan. I don't belong here. My species is not meant for this world. My energy, it can only thrive on the planet where I was born. Without that, I'll be nothing but a shadow. Ethan felt a pang of helplessness, but he refused to give up. We'll figure something out. There has to be a way to help you. You don't have to do this alone. Arya reached out and touched his hand, her fingers cold but gentle. I'm not alone, Ethan. Not anymore. The warmth in her words made Ethan's chest tighten. He had come to realize something. He wasn't just trying to help her survive. He was trying to protect her because he cared more than he had ever let himself admit. Over the next few days, Ethan's determination grew. He knew that if he wanted to save her, he would have to find a way to help Arya connect to her homeworld. But how? One evening as he worked late in the workshop, a new thought struck him. He had read about ancient technology that allowed distant species to communicate across vast distances, using psychic connections to bridge the gap between worlds. What if he could create something like that? It was risky, but it was their only hope. The next morning, he presented his idea to Dr. Kellen. I think I've found something, Ethan said, excitement in his voice. There's a way we might be able to connect Arya to her world. It involves an old piece of technology I've been researching. It uses psychic energy to open a link between different life forces. I think if we can modify it, we could help Arya reach her planet. Dr. Kellen raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. Are you sure about this? We're talking about something that could be dangerous. The energy involved could be too much for both of you to handle. Ethan nodded, a serious look in his eyes. I'm willing to take the risk. We don't have time to waste. Arya's fading. This is our only chance. Dr. Kellen hesitated for a moment, but then sighed. Fine, but I want to be there every step of the way. If anything goes wrong, we stop, agreed? Ethan agreed, and the two of them began working on the device that would hopefully save Arya's life. Days turned into nights as they labored in the workshop, piecing together broken circuits, salvaging old technology, and working with the little knowledge they had of alien biology. It was exhausting, but Ethan pushed forward. The thought of losing Arya made him more determined than ever. Meanwhile, Arya watched from her room, her eyes distant as she sensed the energy growing around her. She could feel Ethan's determination, but also his fear. She knew he was pushing himself too hard. Still, she didn't stop him. She knew that if there was a chance, they had to take it. On the final day, the device was ready. It looked like a strange, intricate machine, part organic, part mechanical, with glowing blue energy flowing through its core. Dr. Kellen had said it might work, but he also warned that there was no certainty. The psychic link could be unstable, and if anything went wrong, it could result in catastrophic consequences for both Arya and Ethan. Ethan stood beside Arya in the small medical room, his heart racing. Are you ready for this? He asked her, his voice trembling slightly. Arya nodded slowly, her lavender eyes filled with uncertainty but also trust. I have no choice, but I trust you, Ethan. With a deep breath, Ethan activated the device. It hummed to life, sending out pulses of energy. The air around them crackled as the machine began to form a connection. Ethan reached out and took Arya's hand, feeling the coldness of her touch but also the faint warmth that connected them. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a strange sensation washed over Ethan. He felt himself being pulled, as though he were drifting through a vast emptiness. He could feel Arya's presence beside him, but at the same time it felt as though they were no longer in the same room. He saw flashes of stars, distant planets, and a world that felt alien yet familiar. Arya's voice broke through the silence, echoing in his mind. Ethan, do you feel it? Ethan nodded, his mind racing. I feel it. I can hear your world, it's calling to me, Arya whispered, her voice softer now, filled with longing. But I can't reach it. Not without you. Ethan's heart pounded. I'll stay with you. We'll make it through this. But suddenly the energy around them began to flicker, unstable. Ethan could feel the connection slipping, the psychic link weakening. He reached out, desperately trying to stabilize the energy, but it was too late. The machine sputtered and sparked, sending a jolt of energy through Ethan's body. He gasped, falling to his knees, but Arya remained standing, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. "No. Stay with me, Ethan," she cried, her voice frantic. Ethan struggled to focus. His vision blurred and his mind swirled in a storm of strange emotions, feelings of both connection and loss. "Arya, I'm right here," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I won't leave you." For a brief moment he felt her hand tighten around his, her energy surging through him. But then,